Good morning. Please stand, join me for we sing of Golden Mornings number 44. We sing of golden mornings, we sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, and stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life-bestowing rain, of birds among the branches and springtime come again. We sing the heart courageous, the youthful eager mind. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing the roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing the earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us glows.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. Welcome, as always, to each and every one of you. We welcome you to this space, and that includes all of your uniqueness, all that comes with you, your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences and differences, and all that helps make you who you are is welcome here today. And this includes, of course, those of you who are in the room with us, as well as the many of you who are live streaming with us today. We're glad to have all of you. I wanted to begin by mentioning that our unity candle is lit in front of the sanctuary here, something that we do when one of our members, usually when one of our members has passed away during the week. This is actually out for George Gervin, who passed away a couple of weeks ago, and I know it was lit in my absence last week already, but I have such a affection for George. I wanted to say a few words myself. So for those who didn't know George, he died a couple of weeks ago after some health issues emerged within the last couple of years. George was well into his 90s. And for those who do know George, just an extremely kind, warm, intelligent presence who seemed always to be more concerned with everyone else around him than himself. And I got to spend some time with him a few days before he died. He was in his home, surrounded by family, of course. And even there in bed, he could only think of me, how happy he was to see me, being a gracious host, and asking me how Peggy was, and Cassidy, who's here with her boyfriend Mark today. He asked how Cassidy was doing. Always just the gracious man. And it has always been incredibly supportive to me and loving towards me from day one. But I could totally just eulogize George right now, and we don't have time, so I'm not going to go into all my memories and thoughts of him here. And there's not been a memorial service scheduled yet because Lila's working on some other issues, of course. But for some reason this morning, the thing that kept coming up for me is some unfinished business I have with George. So about the first winter I was here, there was a demonstration, an environmental demonstration, somewhere here in the area. It was really cold. But we were out there, members of the church came and the wider community. And in the midst of it, there was this giant man kind of looming nearby. He had on this huge, big orange parka. And I mean, it looked like it was Arnold Schwarzenegger inside this coat, just a huge guy. And you could only see, this much of his face because the parka was wrapped around it. And he was sort of standing by and close to me, and I looked at him and I thought, man, that guy looks like he has the face of George Gervin, Surely that's not him because this guy's so big. But I just kind of nodded and then went on my way. Well, it turns out that was George. But he was in this big parka that just made him look like a giant. But he really did have a giant heart and a lot of kindness and affection towards others, and just nothing ever seemed to get him down. I mean, he had a lot of difficulties in their lives, the loss of a son, and he and Lila, a lot of stuff going on. But George would always come in and be positive. I remember when he had I got word that he had a heart incident and had to have a pacemaker in on a Thursday, and Sunday he walks into church, just lively as ever. I said, George, what are you doing here? He goes, oh yeah, and starts as a surgeon, starts telling me about the procedure he had. And then of course, a year ago or so, his cancer returned, and he had to have an eye removed, also late in the week. And Sunday in walks George with a patch and a smile, So I just will always remember his big personality that really deserved to have a big parka that made him look like a giant, because in that sense he was a giant of a man. So I wanted to have his light here this morning as a symbol of his love and his compassion and his life, because I wanted to be here to say a few words about him, and hopefully I'll get a chance to say a lot more downstream. But please keep Lila and the kids and their family in your thoughts at this time. All right, so with that said, please take a few moments, as always, to greet one another, say hi to those you look forward to seeing each Sunday, and perhaps make some new friends today as well. All right, thank you. More time to visit during social hour as always after our service, but let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
In a children's poetry anthology that I read to my daughters when they were little is a poem titled Leisure by W.H. Davies, and here are a few stanzas from it. What is this life if, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows, no time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. Today we'll consider in Reverend Todd's sermon the thesis that powerful technologies may have robbed children of the time to stand and stare. Many kids now stare at screens, not nature. We must ask ourselves whether, in Jonathan Haidt's words, smartphones have produced a great rewiring of childhood, in his words. We must also ask, as Franklin Foer argues in his book, World Without Mind, whether social media has forced a feedback loop of conformity, or whether, as Ray Bradbury predicted in his 1951 dystopian novel, Fahrenheit 451, an autocratic government could someday control its citizens with wall-to-wall TV that only simulates community, and a fire department that arrives to burn books, not douse fires. I'm not sure that Haidt has completely proven a link between childhood anxiety and smartphones, but the rise in mental health problems in children born after 1995 is real. I recently talked to a leader at a liberal arts college in this state who told me his school is seeing a wave of anxiety and other mental health problems in students, especially girls, and there aren't enough experts to cope with this new epidemic. This is a community problem. How do we protect childhood?
Please stand, join me for number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
We're now going to kindle our candles of care on behalf of those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And we will begin, as we have been for far too long, on behalf of the people of Ukraine and that region of the world that are being impacted by the war and violence there, as well as the people of Israel and Palestinian people who are being impacted by the terrible violence and war in that part of the world. And I do want to say, in light of the attempted assassination attempt of Donald Trump yesterday, which is horrible, of course, that we really need to kindle a candle for the same kind of violence that is being done by the epidemic of military-style weapons that are allowed in this country. And my hope would be that rather than using this as an opportunity by one party to criticize what they disagree about by another party, that both parties would come together and pass sensible laws that finally will get these guns out of our community. Let's take a moment of silence, embracing others who are here and here in our hearts, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
At this point, I'd like to invite any children up for our time for all ages.
Sorry, I covered
All right, and the title of my story today is one you might not like very much. It's called Animal School. How do you feel about school these days? It's not even in your mind, is it? Right in the middle of summer break. Well, this is a story that was loosely adapted by someone named Devorah Greenstein from a story that George Revis wrote when he was the assistant superintendent of the Cincinnati Public Schools in the 1940s. Here we go. Many years ago, the animals in the Great Forest decided they wanted us to start a school for all their children. Until that time, it had been the responsibility of the parents to teach their children the skills they needed to know. But the animals of the Great Forest wanted their children to learn from professionals. The teachers they hired met and decided to provide a standardized curriculum to their animal students. The activities included swimming, running, flying, and climbing. All the animals took all the subjects. And here's what happened. The ducks were excellent at swimming. In fact, the ducks were even better than their teacher. But some of the ducks made only passing grades in flying, and all of them were pretty poor in running. Since they were slow in running, they had to stay after school for remedial running practice. And they had to drop swimming in order to practice running during their swimming class time. This was kept up until all the ducks' webbed feet were very sore. And the ducks were so tired that soon they were only average in swimming. But average was acceptable in school, so nobody worried about that, except for the ducks, of course. In running, the rabbits started at the top of the class, but they did very poorly in swimming. Also, the rabbits insisted on hopping around, and the teachers were concerned about their hyperactivity, so they made the rabbits walk everywhere instead of allowing them to run or hop. And the rabbits had to come in very early every day for a special swimming class. Many of the younger rabbits developed severe fur problems because they were having to spend so much time in the swimming pool. The squirrels were excellent at climbing and running. In fact, the squirrels were the best students at climbing the tree. But they wanted to fly by first climbing the tree and then spreading their paws and gliding to the ground. But in flying class, their teacher made them start on the ground instead of the treetop. So every day, the squirrels had therapy. A flying therapist took the squirrels into the gym and made them do front paw exercises so that they could strengthen their muscles and fly the right way. The squirrels' paws hurt so much from overexertion that some of them only got a C in climbing, and some of them failed climbing altogether. The eagles were definitely our problem children. In climbing class, the eagles beat all the others to the top of the tree, but they insisted on using their own way to get there and were quite stubborn about it. The eagles said clearly it was the goal that mattered and that it was quite right for eagles to get to the treetop by flying. Needless to say, a strict behavior modification plan was developed for our eagles. Sadly, in some schools, we still make squirrel children learn to fly by flapping their paws, and we punish eagles for being defiant about their right to be themselves. But in other schools, we allow all children to be themselves. Every squirrel is a perfectly wonderful squirrel, and each rabbit is a lovely rabbit, whether they choose to hop, skip, roll, or walk. Each eagle is allowed to be an eagle. And we encourage each duck to swim and not worry too much about learning how to run. So to conclude our story about an animal school, please join me in singing our Children Out to Play Club, where they can play as they please.
As we prepare for meditation, I invite you to center yourself, breathe deeply, and reflect on these words by Frederick Gillis. We are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with all the universe. We are grateful for the miracle of consciousness that we share, the consciousness that gives us the power to remember, to love, to care.
It must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine. That's your way. You always walked a step behind. So I was the one with all the glory, while you were the one with all the strength. A beautiful face without a name for so long. A beautiful smile to hide the
Wow. Thank you so much. All the birds outside fell silent to hear you singing today. That was, I have a good sermon here, but that was the highlight of the service, I promise you. Thank you both so much. Just a couple of days ago, you probably noticed in an article in our local paper reporting that our Spokane County School District is going to ban cell phone use in classrooms beginning this year. This is just one of many similar reports I've heard since the publication of social psychologist Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness, which recommends, rather than merely banning their use during classes, that schools should go phone-free for the entirety of the school day. Since its release just 4 months ago, there have been reports of several public schools or school districts passing similar bans in places like Ontario, Canada, and in U.S. states as conservative as Texas and as liberal as California. I'm not sure how many of these bans are in response to Haidt's book, but given the timing and its success, I'm guessing that there is some correlation. Yet, as the book points out, most public schools in the United States already say that they ban phones. 77% said so in a 2020 survey. Even so, Haidt argues that smartphones are a major cause of the growing number of kids and young people with anxiety, depression, and other mental or emotional problems. So merely banning their use during class, where they remain a distraction, isn't enough, he thinks. Using them at other times during the school days also distracts kids from engaging in the kind of social interactions that are part of healthy human maturation. So instead of keeping them on their persons, Haidt recommends that when students arrive, they put their phones into a dedicated phone locker or into a lockable phone pouch. And at the end of the day, they retrieve those phones from the locker or they access a device that unlocks the pouch. So I begin my response to the anxious generation in this way because the distinction between what Haidt refers to as the phone-based childhood and the play-based childhood is really at the core of what it's all about. His evidence and his reasoning are sound enough that he's made a believer out of me. And I think that what he has to say is important enough for us to consider during a church service because it addresses the health of our children and ultimately the health of our society. Fortunately, because it's a big book, he concludes each chapter with a summary of his own, which I have simply summarized even further for our purposes today. I will, however, for the sake of time, have to leave out much of his research supporting his points, so I do recommend that you read the book for yourself. He divides the anxious generation into 4 parts. The first, the tidal wave, wherein he presents statistics that verify the worsening mental health of young people. The decline of the play-based childhood, which explores how the reduction of unsupervised play has negatively affected childhood development. The rise of the phone-based childhood, which examines the negative impacts of smartphone use, with specific chapters addressing the distinct harms of girls and the distinct harms of boys. And collective actions for better childhood, which offers solutions for parents and schools and governments to mitigate the damage being done and promote healthier childhood experiences. So these are the areas that I'm going to dive a bit deeper into. So Haidt begins by arguing with convincing data that between 2010 and 2015, American teens' social lives shifted significantly to smartphones, fostering continuous engagement with social media and online activities. This great rewiring of childhood, as he calls it, is seen as the primary cause for the surge of adolescent mental illness issues, including anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide in some cases, particularly affecting Gen Z, those born after 1995, who experienced puberty during this period. So one study shows that between 2010 and 2018, anxiety rose 134% and depression rose 106% among college students. The mental health crisis has hit girls, especially preteens, harder than boys, though boys have also seen significant increases in depression and anxiety. As another survey indicates, between 2010 and 2020, adolescent emergency room visits for self-harm rose 188% for girls and 48% for boys. And these trends also extend beyond the U.S. to other Western nations, with similar patterns observed globally, including in Latin America and Asia. This sudden shift is counter to how human childhood is supposed to work, at least according to Haidt, which is uniquely and normally characterized by an extended period of brain development that allows for extensive cultural learning. By age 5, children's brains are 90% of adult size, yet the configuration process continues, making childhood a crucial period for acquiring cultural skills. Free, unsupervised play with other kids is vital for developing social and physical skills, fostering abilities like conflict resolution and attunement with others. Right? So any other young animals out there that you observe, how do they learn? Do they go to animal school, as Stephanie talked about earlier? They play with each other. That's how they learn to become adults in their species. The shift to phone-based childhoods has hindered this development, again, according to Haidt, as social media's random and performative nature inhibits true social connection, leaving heavy users craving real interactions and often, as the data shows, feeling isolated and alone. Children innately learn culture through conformist and prestige biases, copying common behaviors and emulating accomplished individuals or role models. But if they are conforming and seeking prestige online rather than on the schoolyard or playground, Haidt thinks that it's easy for things to go awry. Social media designed for engagement can actually disrupt traditional learning by exposing children to online influencers, as they're called, often of dubious value, overshadowing familial and community cultures. This disruption is particularly impactful during the sensitive ages of 9 to 15, and another critical period for cultural learning and identity formation. Who am I? And we learn that through our relationships with others. If you're learning who you are through your relationships with others online, that's different, at least than how it has been. He further points out that the human brain operates in two modes: discover mode, approaching opportunities, and defend mode, guarding against threats. Post-1995 generations are often stuck in defend mode, remaining overly alert to threats and more anxious. Children naturally require exposure to risks and challenges to develop resilience and strength, akin to how the immune system needs germs. However, increased parental fear and overprotection since the 1980s have limited some of those experiences, leading to fragile and fearful adults. Safetyism, as Haidt calls it, which prioritizes safety above much else, hampers children's ability to handle risk and frustrations, affecting their development and ability to relate well with others. Safetyism blocks essential experiences that teach them to manage anxiety, risk, and self-governance, which is necessary for healthy adulthood. Early puberty, especially, is a period of significant brain rewiring involving rapid neural pruning and strengthening. What is the brain we are going to have for most of our lives is driven by adolescent experiences. Thriving children typically enjoy a play-based, real-world childhood, unlike those deprived by fearful parenting and a phone-based upbringing. Traditionally, rites of passage, he says, helped adolescents transition to adulthood through structured phases: separation, transformation, and reincorporation. These rites provided curated experiences that guided adolescents in developing resilience and competence. However, Western societies have largely abandoned these rites, and the digital age has further eroded these milestones, leading to a lack of clear paths to adulthood. Instead, children are now inundated with unfiltered, age-inappropriate stimuli from online sources. For this reason, Haidt believes large, diverse, and secular societies like the U.S. and the United Kingdom could benefit from reintroducing structured milestones to offer stepwise increases in freedoms and responsibilities. So, practically speaking, as a parent, that might mean that, at age 8 or 9, you say, okay, you get to go to the store by yourself today. Or you have a responsibility to clean up after your pet. And at age 13, it's something else. At age 16, it's something else, and so on. But giving the kids a chance to do things without us watching over them. So from here, Haidt describes what he considers the 4 foundational harms of the phone-based childhood, each profoundly affecting social, emotional, and cognitive development due to the rapid technological shifts during the early 2010s. The first of those is social deprivation. Adolescents' face-to-face interactions plummeted, dropping from 122 minutes per day in 2012 to 67 minutes per day in 2019. That was exacerbated in part by COVID. Sleep deprivation. Smartphone use led to significant declines in sleep quality and quantity, causing issues like depression, anxiety, cognitive deficits, and accidents. Attention fragmentation. Smartphones disrupt attention with constant notification. Excuse me just a second. No. Hindering, I should say, the development of executive function and sustained focus. Addiction. Social media apps use behaviorist techniques to hook adolescents, leading to behavioral addictions with withdrawal symptoms like anxiety and irritability, akin to a gambling addiction. Again, he believes that these foundational harms collectively explain the sudden deterioration in adolescent mental health as childhood shifted to being phone-based. An important insight from his book, as mentioned, is that heavy use of social media harms girls more than boys, the former exhibiting higher rates of depression and other disorders. Girls are usually oriented to platforms like Instagram and TikTok, more so than boys, intensifying social comparisons and perfectionism. Social media also amplifies relational aggression, which girls use to harm others' relationships and reputations. In addition to spreading anxiety and depression, the internet facilitates harassment and exploitation, exposing girls to unwanted attention and pressure from older men and peers. Social media's promise of connection also often leads to increased loneliness and mental health issues, particularly for girls. And this may explain the sharp rise in loneliness among girls in the early 2010s, while boys experienced a more gradual increase. But in brief, the visual and hyper-connected nature of social media platforms exacerbates mental health issues among girls by fostering negative social comparisons, relational aggression, emotional contagion, and online harassment. And these factors collectively contribute to a significant decline in mental health and well-being for girls in the digital age. But this does not mean that boys are not being negatively impacted and stunted by this shift to the phone-based childhood. In the early 2010s, boys like girls saw increased rates of depression and anxiety, but their struggles began earlier with declining achievement engagement since the 1970s. Boys retreated from physical activities into the virtual world, Haidt says, leading to issues like failure to launch, as it's come to be called. American boys shifted from externalizing behaviors to more internalizing patterns traditionally seen in girls and began avoiding risk, right? Because instead of playing outside, they went inside to play with virtual games with virtual friends, or online, I should say. And this shift created let me back up here. Yeah, so the advent of smartphones, which again hindered their transition into adulthood and contributed to declining mental health, or so Haidt argues. In this way, then, the great rewiring of childhood and poor quality social interactions can impacts for a subset of boys who became problematic users, as he puts it. And this shift created a sense of isolation and a lack of normality, even as an understanding of morality dissolved into a flux of online networks, right? What is the right thing to do? Who's modeling that for me? Who's helping me understand who I am to be as a moral agent in the world? In the end, both boys and girls then ended up feeling that their lives were meaningless, despite following different paths through this technological upheaval. So from here, Haidt goes into a chapter titled Spiritual Elevation and Degradation, which he begins by saying, "Now I'd like to write less as a social scientist than as a fellow human being." And indeed, this was my least favorite chapter, and one where his lack of expertise shows. In brief, Haidt believes that morally beautiful things uplift us, while morally repulsive things degrade us, and that a phone-based life is one of those things that degrades us, thus making it a morally repulsive thing. Part of the solution to this problem, then, is to reconnect with some sort of spiritual tradition. Haidt, who describes himself as an atheist, still appreciates the good that he can gain from religious metaphors and practice, including rituals that require us to actually move our bodies in the real world, meditation that requires us to seek calm and distance ourselves from distractions, like our smartphones, seeking self-growth and knowledge rather than approval from others, forgiving rather than judging others, and going outdoors and experiencing the awe and wonder of nature. Overall, he thinks a phone-based life fills the human need for meaning with trivial content, contrasting the enriching experiences recommended by ancient wisdom. So Haidt concludes the anxious generation by suggesting some of the things that our governments, our schools, and our parents can do to help fix the concerns that he raises. Governments, he says, need to revise policies to improve adolescent mental health. In the U.S., state and local governments contribute to the overprotection of children through broad neglect laws that make it a crime for children to ever be unaccompanied, even if they are simply riding their bikes to the playground, for instance. This is so even while the federal government has failed to pass sufficient laws to protect children online. Right? So it's a crime to let your kids outdoors, bring them back inside where they can get on the internet. It's kind of backwards. National governments should adopt laws like those in the UK, he says, which require tech companies to offer extra protections for minors and to raise the internet age to 16. Tech companies themselves should develop better age verification and parental control features, rather than just a button that says, "Are you 18?" or whatever it might be. Right? In addition to narrowing these neglect laws, state and local governments should promote free play and more recess in schools and invest in vocational education to help adolescents transition into adulthood. Meanwhile, he recommends that schools should again go phone-free and encourage more play during the school day. This means providing safe places to store their devices when necessary, improving recess with more time, building better playgrounds, and having fewer rules. He also recommends the Let Grow project, which involves children doing tasks independently and increases competence and parental trust by encouraging free play and autonomy and the ability for kids to solve and resolve some of their own problems without adult intercession, further building their self-reliance and less anxiety. To re-engage boys and address their declining academic progress, Haidt says schools should offer more vocational training, shop classes, and hire more male teachers. These measures, combined with phone-free and playful environments, he believes can prevent mental health issues and improve overall student well-being. Finally, he encourages parents to better prepare children for our world of rapid technological change by giving them more unsupervised free play, fostering independence and responsibility. He recommends delaying the introduction of smartphones until high school to help reduce the negative impacts of a phone-based childhood. Parents can also encourage real-world engagement by sending children to technology-free camps, camping trips, and finding social settings without smartphones. Increasing mobility, part-time jobs, and programs like student exchange or summer wilderness experiences can develop confidence and competence. Reducing screen time, particularly in early childhood, and using parental controls can also help. Overcoming parental anxiety about giving children more independence is most crucial. And joining with other parents committed in doing so can make this easier and more enjoyable. So that is my whirlwind summary of The Anxious Generation, a book I think is important and that I mostly agree with. Not long before its publication, some of you might recall, I too spoke about the antisocial consequences of looking down at our screens instead of into each other's faces and eyes in order to engage our mirror neurons, which enable us to relate to others. While reading Haidt's book, however, I did have a nagging sense that something was missing. Not that I am criticizing him for what he has not written, or for not discussing matters beyond the scope of his subject. Still, upon reflection, I found myself also recognizing the good that such technology brings to our lives. Saying, as Haidt does, that the phone-based life produces spiritual degradation, not just in adolescents, but in all of us, or that there is a God-shaped hole in every human heart, or at least many people feel a yearning for meaning, connection, and spiritual elevation, a phone-based life often fills that hole with trivial and degrading content. equates this technology with evil and taboo and makes the conversation sound primitive, at least to me. Communications technology, from the first writings to the printing press to books and newspapers, the radio, and all the flat screen variants that have been in our lives for the past 100 years, have also caused extreme social disruption. But even as they have drawn our attention away from those in our immediate communities and tribes, whom we were mostly limited to engaging with without these technologies, to an awareness of other lives and better ideas from distant places that have simultaneously brought us closer as a human species to becoming a global community. What Haidt calls the virtual world, virtual lives, virtual networks, and so on, I simply call the world. They are real interactions with real people, even if they transcend what until now has been limited to those within our immediate vicinity. Today, all of us, including our kids, have the opportunity to meet and learn and struggle upon the schoolyards and playgrounds of the world. I believe there is something uplifting about this that is good for us and our kids. Although I agree with Haidt that we must adapt our habits to take advantage of this technology's benefits while avoiding its risks. And I agree with Haidt's concerns and his solutions, especially getting kids to look up and engage with those around them most of the time. The anxious generation is a work of evolutionary adaptation, calling upon us to avoid some of the dangers that have gotten us into serious trouble during the past 15 years. But I also wonder if anxiety and depression are the worst kinds of mental and emotional stress impacting our societies today. I think that the paranoia and delusional thinking demonstrated by the wider society is far worse, more widespread, and currently is ripping our global societies, our countries, and even our local communities apart. And most of today's paranoid, delusional thinkers did grow up with a play-based childhood, not a phone-based childhood. And to me, their fear and hatred of those they consider outsiders is as degrading to themselves, to humanity, and to our human potential as anything ever has been. The solution to this cannot be to go backward to a more primitive, perhaps over-romanticized kind of living, to a nostalgic, the good old days that never really existed. I spent time on those playgrounds and schoolyards. The solution must be to move forward toward a more humane way of being with each other than has ever been experienced. To me, this means adapting our technology, not just adapting ourselves to technology, adapting our technology so that we don't have to use it by withdrawing from the world around us or from others around us. And this is precisely the direction that we're heading with augmented reality. In just a few years, far sooner than later, we will be moving towards augmented reality that will move our computer experience into our spatial world. And I say a few years because AR already exists. And these little flat screens are going to go away. The brief era of about a century's worth of flat screens will go away. And that means we're going to be able to engage even more with more people in the world both near and far, in ways that we never before could. So I learned a new term just this week, protopia. Protopia. So instead of facing either the choice between a perfect utopian future or a horrifying dystopian future, we can simply work steadily to make the future better than it is right now, than the world is right now, for all of us. That's what protopia means, moving forward. And that's what I hope for our anxious and depressed kids, for our paranoid and delusional adults, and for the whole of humanity, that we can keep improving, keep moving forward, becoming our best, making the world better as together we continue to take small steps and make giant leaps forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stand, join me for number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
I leave you today with the words of Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind us each to all. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.